Let me just briefly touch on the global situation before I come to the Malaysian situation. The global landscape is problematic. The China steel consumption, or overall demand in China, not just steel, but overall demand in China is facing serious challenges. Whether that challenges is short-term or structural remain to be seen. And within the region, certainly we are dealing with the challenge of overcapacity in Southeast Asia. So those are challenges that we will have to deal with, particularly the steel industry. Over the last year, Minister Tunku Zafrul has set up a committee led by HSBC CEO Dato' Omar Siddiq. And that committee consisted of, I see two faces here, Professor Ong Ken Ming, maybe you can raise your hand, and also Yeo Wee Jin, as well as Hisham Hamdan from Khazanah and Chandi Kai. Through the work of this committee, we learned some of the challenges and also possibilities of the steel industry. The committee is trying to deal with a twin challenge, and these twin challenges are connected or interconnected. How to ensure that the steel industry is both environmentally sustainable and economically sustainable. It is very difficult, therefore we appointed a banker. Because ultimately, the question that we all have to answer is that can the steel industry make profit, and is the steel industry bankable? And we are hoping that we can deal with that questions. Now the report is not out yet, but the report is almost done to be presented to my minister, Tunku Zafrul, very soon. And some of the challenges are this. The steel industry, we have to deal with these two challenges, okay? Whether it's economically sustainable and environmentally sustainable. We found out that utilization in Malaysia is low. The utilization is low compared to our regional peers. We found out that there are challenges on the needs to create a level playing field between the following challenges. How do we create a level playing field between the EF player and the blast furnace BF-BOF operations? That, I think, is a level playing field that we have to deal with. How do we deal with between foreign players and local players? This year, as you notice, there are some anti-dumping actions that has been taken. And actually, only through the work of this committee, I realized that there are also another challenge between the legal and illegal operations. One illegal operation has been shut down recently, and the others will also be dealt with. And this has been a problem that has been left for many years. No one dealt with it, and through the process, I found out that MITI has no enforcement power. MITI has to go through the local council and the state government to enforce. And these are operations that has been there for many years with no manufacturing license, with no local authorities approval. I mean, the scale of the problem is actually quite shocking to me. But it's good that at least we have taken some actions. We'll continue to take actions, and we await the report to be presented, and eventually base our activities or base our future policy actions on the recommendation of the Omar Siddiq report. On the questions of carbon and environmental sustainability, Prime Minister Anwar launched 3 major documents last year. He launched the Madani Economic Framework in July. In August, he launched the National Energy Transition Roadmap. And in September last year, he launched the new Industrial Master Plan. These are connected. These are connected, and this is for the first time in a long, long time, the government is very clear. There is a government that is clear about the needs to connect the three. How do we ensure that we raise the ceiling and raise the floor at once? How do we ensure that we transition in terms of energy? And how do we ensure that we have a different type of industrialization compared to what we used to have? Now, these are connected. Why these are connected? Number one, and these are related to the steel industry. Number one, at the moment, we have huge capacity, and too huge, I think, of capacity for long products. But there's a mismatch. There's a mismatch where we are importing flat products massively. So that balance has to be dealt with. That means how do we actually, at some point, curb the capacity for long products, but at the same time, raise flat products. I think that is a challenge that we will have to go through, and through the industry that we are bringing in. We're hoping that through the industry that we are bringing in as you have already seen quite a lot of investment, we will be able to create more demand and eventually lead to leads to flat product being profitable, being seen profitable, and being a lot more investment into that segment. When I talk about the challenge on energy transition, if all the capacity that has been approved is going to come into stream, it will affect our energy transition. Yeah, the government this year has made a very clear commitment. 2 years ago, the previous Prime Minister made a commitment of achieving net zero as soon as 2050. This year, the government has made a clearer commitment. We aspire to achieve net zero in 2050. The language is a bit different, but the outcome is a lot more different. If all the proposed capacity that has already been approved all come into stream and installed, it will equate to 6 more coal-fired power plants to be built. So this is a question that we will have to deal with. We will have to deal with the questions whether all the approved capacity, if we come into stream, we will have to build 6 more coal-fired power plants. I mean, it's equate to 6 more coal-fired power plants. It will affect the energy transition that we aspire to achieve. Therefore, you see that in this budget, there's a mention of carbon tax. Carbon tax, now that it is mentioned in the budget, I think now everyone is now treating it a bit more seriously. I know that there are a lot of complaints about CBAM, EU CBAM, right? But very soon, when Malaysia start talking about a Malaysian carbon tax, among you, I think you will start advocating for a Malaysian CBAM. Okay, you see the logic. Actually, the European CBAM is such that when EU implement carbon tax, they will have to prevent carbon leakages, and therefore they have to put in a CBAM. But when they put in a CBAM, it means that if we collect carbon tax, the money will stay in Malaysia through Malaysian carbon tax, and it will not flow to EU. Likewise, once Malaysia start implementing carbon tax, there will be a need for a Malaysian CBAM, so that other steel that is not that is not up to the same level, we will have to collect carbon tax here in order to create a level playing field for Malaysian steel corporations, right? Because Malaysian steel you have to pay carbon tax. Therefore, the imports from other countries will have to pay Malaysian carbon tax to create a level playing field. Now, so this is a new challenges and new issues that we will have to deal with. But at the same time, once you have carbon tax, as shown in the case of EU and many other places, the collection from carbon tax, as promised by Prime Minister in the budget, the collection will go into fund green transition. So green transition fund, much as the argument is where is the money coming from to fund green transition? In many countries, green transition is partially funded by collections of carbon tax. So we are entering into a new conversation. I hope today's meeting you will have a lot of chance to deal with this new subject of carbon tax. But nonetheless, the challenge remains. We will have to start measuring carbon. Okay? We as a nation, we have not entered into the business of measuring carbon sufficiently. Once we measure carbon across the board, then we will be able to say, okay, carbon pricing. We'll have to put a price on carbon. Once you have a price on carbon, then you decide on whether you trade or tax. And in the case of steel industry and energy industry, the government has decided to tax. And once you have collection from tax, what do? You fund green transition. I think that is the loop of carbon financing that we are now seriously given a chance to talk about it, and I hope this conference will deal with it a lot. Now, throughout the last whole year, we have also dealt with the issues of overcapacity or capacity from China. In multiple occasions when I engaged with the Chinese government and when the Malaysian government engaged with the Chinese government, this is for the first time that the Malaysian government raised the issue of steel industry with our Chinese counterpart. We are hoping to create a mechanism with the Chinese government so that Malaysian government will establish a G2G mechanism with the Chinese government on the steel industry, both on the questions of managing capacity, but also on the questions of technology sharing and R&D sharing. In my recent meeting with the Deputy Minister or Vice Minister in the case of China, the Vice Minister of Ministry of Information and Technology, Gong Xinbu, Vice Minister Wang Jiangping, we discussed seriously about how to create that G2G mechanism. And in the case of Malaysia, we are hoping that we will base the discussion with the Chinese government on the recommendation of the Omar Siddiq report. Also this year in the ASEAN Economic Ministers meeting in Luang Prabang, Laos, which I attended, I also raised the questions of an ASEAN-wide discussion on the steel industry, and within ASEAN as well as with the Chinese government. Wee Jin has briefed the ASEAN Secretariat on the questions of the steel industry, and we are hoping to get other countries, other regional partners to join us to talk about the steel industry within ASEAN and also with the Chinese government. These are the actions and effort that we have made this year in order to raise awareness about the challenges that the steel industry is facing and the potential collaboration between the Malaysian government and the Chinese government on the steel industry, and between between ASEAN and China on the steel industry. I would now want to touch a bit on governing the steel industry. As once the Omar Siddiq report is unveiled, then you will see that there are discussions about governing the steel industry. Personally, I find it difficult to navigate because the regulatory landscape is fragmented. So we have MITI, we have MITI involved, we have MSI, Malaysia Steel Institute, and of course there is the role of the Malaysia Steel Council. We're hoping to revamp the Malaysian Steel Council to meet more regularly and to have more robust input from the industry, as well as we would like to see a total revamp of the Malaysian Steel Institute, MSI, so that we can have a credible and robust input, policy input from MSI and also from the industry. I would like to say that through this work that we have done over the last year or so, I think there is a lot more that we have to work together. There's a lot more that we have to work together because the challenges are new. The challenges are new and it comes quite rapidly because now we are dealing with a slowdown in China, we're dealing with overcapacity, we're dealing here in Southeast Asia, we are also dealing with green transition or seriously thinking about emission in a way that we have not done so. So I hope this conference will help us to think about the twin sustainability. How do we ensure economic sustainability of the industry, and how do we ensure the environmental sustainability of the industry? And as I say, my ambition and the government ambition is to ensure that this industry continues to be profitable, this industry is bankable, this industry will do well, and we are hoping that this industry will do well on the back of not just infrastructure project that Roshan mentioned, but also on the back of what I call the second takeoff, that we are seeing massive amount of investment coming to this region and coming to Malaysia. And we think that this second takeoff will benefit everyone, and the steel industry will benefit from this second takeoff as well. Thank you very much.